Ari, welcome to Whistle Talks. It's such a pleasure to have you here with us.
Thank you so much for having me. It's my pleasure.
So, before we jump onto the topic, could you give us a little bit of history on how you got into the industry of sales and your career so far, as well as a little bit about foundations?
Absolutely. So, when I got into sales, oh boy, in a galaxy far, far away, 1,000 years ago, it started. I started in sales many, 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 many years ago, and I
Did you
would say that
start as an SDR?
no, actually, I did not.
Oh,
My first sales role was in retail, actually, where I was responsible for selling at a little old video rental company called Blockbuster, which some people might forget. And I was responsible for being the cashier and upselling things at the cash, specifically things called entertainment packs and rewards memberships. And I found out then that I was actually quite good at it. And the people that simply asked more got higher numbers, and the whole success around it was not necessarily around what you were saying, but just simply saying it and just simply asking. And I'd say that was my first aha moment in sales, that just the more you ask and the more you do the thing, the more results that you're going to get. From there, I was in another retail space at a office supplies store where I was responsible for selling different technologies on the floor and then selling insurance to go along with those technologies. And so those were my first two real experiences in sales. And then following that professionally in sales, when I started, there was no such thing as an SDR role. There was just full cycle. It was You had segments that you worked, and you were responsible for developing your own leads. You were responsible for making your own calls and closing your own deals and doing it from end to end.
then you ended up becoming an entrepreneur.
Yeah, so I was in professional sales. I'm going to call it B2B sales for, I would say, about 15 years until I decided to start my own firm. I found that I was working for a lot of startups, and that while working for startups, I found that they did a lot of things wrong, more things wrong than right when it came to sales. And it was frustrating for me as a professional salesperson to go through these organizations and see all of these problems, recommend these solutions, and no one listened. No one listened. And the people that I saw suffer for it were the people on the bottom floor, the people who were actually doing the work. They were the ones who were suffering for it. And for me, I personally, I didn't care. Like I would go and work anywhere, and I'd be happy as a clam. But I saw how it affected other people, and that affected. And so I decided at that point that I wanted to be an entrepreneur, and proceeded to um, get my butt handed to me. I would say for about 4 years. Four
Wow.
years it took me to really figure out what needed to be done, and part of that figuring out was figuring out that I needed partners to help me out, which was when I brought on my partners, Zach and Elliot, to join me.
On today's topic, you definitely know a lot about cold calling, tonality, energy, and the pace of cold calling.
When you don't have face-to-face body language, the only thing that you have to utilize is your voice, and that's the only thing that they hear on the other end.
Yeah.
And the way you approach a call is going to heavily impact the results of that call. And I've seen it time and time again. I've seen the way that people react towards low energy calling and the way that people react to high energy calling. So let's do a little bit of an experiment for a second. And I know the viewers might not be able to see at home, but Kayla, I want you to close your eyes for a second. I'm going to go and say say a line two different ways. And I want you to tell me which way sounded better and which way sounded worse.
Okay.
So this is the first way. Hi, I'm looking to speak with Kayla. Is this her? Kayla, hey, my name's Ari. I'm calling from Foundation Sales Consulting. How are you doing today? Hey, I'm looking to speak with Kayla. Do I have the right number? Hey, Kayla, my name's Ari. It's great to meet you. How you doing?
You're so enthusiastic. I love it.
You don't know who's on the other end of the line. And someone comes with that kind of energy. One, it's so hard to hang up on them and be mean to them. Because you
That's so
feel
true.
bad. You feel bad for it. You're like, this person is like a Labrador, like a golden retriever. They're just so happy. Like, I don't want to trounce on their happiness.
Exactly. Exactly. But don't you, I mean, I'm sure you still have people put the phone down on you, even if
Of
you have
course.
that it's just a thing. But I think if someone like I didn't know how to speak to me like that, I'd be like, why are you so happy? You're sitting behind a phone trying to sell ink. Why are you so excited about it?
So I've had someone ask me that before, actually. And they said, why are you so
That's
excited? Why are you
hilarious.
so happy? And I said, I'm happy because I get to speak to brand new people every single day. And sometimes I get to solve their problems for them. And sometimes this is a problem that they've had for years that they haven't been able to figure out. And I'm the one that gets to bring that solution to them. Isn't that cool?
So cool. That is amazing. That is such an amazing perspective. Is there something as having too much energy on a cold call?
I don't think so. I
Okay.
I absolutely don't think so. Similar to seasoning for some people when it comes to cooking, I think that if you think you're putting too much salt on your meat, then it's probably the right amount of salt for you to put on your meat. And most people, when they're seasoning their food, it's under seasoned. And I think when most people are doing cold calls, their energy is not quite as high as it quite needs to be. And when it's so over the top that you think you sound ridiculous, that's just the right amount of energy.
I love
However,
that.
there's a caveat.
Okay.
We use our voices to convey stories and emotions. And at the beginning, having that energy for being excited isn't the only emotion that we want to maintain. We also want to show a level of subject matter expertise and
Yes.
confidence when we speak to people. So the way our voice goes up or down is just as important. So when I cold call somebody, you've heard the start of what I say. I say, "Hey, it's great to meet you." Normally, people will say immediately after that, "Yeah, it's great to meet you too. Who's this?" I know I'm interrupting your day. If you give me 27 seconds, I'll let you know exactly why I'm calling. Sound fair? And that's called a permission based opener, which I like.
Okay.
But
I
then
like
when
that
I
too.
get into it, I'll go and start with the problem that they have. So I'll say, you know, I'm calling to speak with technical founders. My firm, Foundation Sales Consulting, we help technical founders build scalable sales functions. So this is what we found. I'm not telling you what you are having on your side. I'm saying we've spoken with thousands of people and this is what we found. We've found that technical founders are amazing at building incredible products. I'm pausing there because I want that to sink in. And I want them to say in their head, yeah, I do build amazing, incredible products. When it comes to sales process, they really struggle. I'm taking them through this journey. I want
To
them
make
to
them
get on
realize.
this and I want them to get on the same side as me. And I want them to think about the words that I'm saying as I'm saying them. That's where we shine. So that's a good thing.
So you never ever approach a cold call by saying, "Hi, you're speaking to Ari from Foundations."
No,
You
never,
never announce yourself
never.
because people are like they automatically like, okay, I don't care.
One, they don't care. That's true. And two, when you say that, when you talk like that, you sound like every other person that
No,
calls them. You are literally following the same framework that every single person follows.
what is the biggest mistake that salespeople make in terms of tone on a cold call?
They're uncomfortable with silence. People think on cold calls that they need to fill every single void in every single section with words, whether it's
Yeah.
them talking or you talking, and get to them booking a meeting as soon as humanly possible. That's not how human conversation works. When you let things ring in the air, it's giving them a chance to think. And when you slow down the call and you show I'm not worried if you hang up or not, it changes the dynamic. Notice that as I was talking here, I slowed down my pace. I lowered my vocal tone. And by doing that, I'm emphasizing the words more of what I'm saying.
So less is more in that sense.
Much more. And making it
And
fifth grade English using very simple words. It's actually a thing that the vast majority, especially of Americans, they don't read or operate at higher than a fifth grade English. And they won't understand what you're saying if you talk beyond that. Not to say that they won't understand the words if they actually read it, but it'll take them a second to go back, reread it, think about what you're saying. And you don't want them thinking about what you're saying. You want them to hear it and understand it perfectly and get your message from the second that you say it.
isn't it such a fine line between using jargon and all this, like, all these words that helps them with their problem? So now you're selling something very technical. You don't want to bombard them with all these solutions, but you also want to sound smart enough to know that you have the answer.
So, most people, when trying to sell things, will sell a solution and not sell a problem. And when you start to sell the problem and instead of the solution, your subject matter expertise becomes much more obvious as you're talking to people. And the reason is because you're focusing on the things that hurt. No one cares about your solution to something. They care about their problems that they have,
Their pain points.
their pain points. The main pain points that we're seeing with people is that lead gen agencies are not working for the vast majority of technical founders because most lead gen agencies, and I know Whistle does not do this, comes in and blindly books meetings for them without getting any context or any understanding of their business. And when that happens, it's not successful, which is why Whistle is very successful, because when they come into projects, they take a very deep understanding and knowledge of what the problem is from the customer. And once they understand that, they can tailor messaging so that they're hitting the right people.
Exactly.
The vast majority of lead gen agencies don't do that. They just care about filling up your calendar. They just care about the numbers.
Yeah.
And the
How many calls
quality,
they've made.
not just how many calls they made, but how many meetings they can book into your calendar. And it doesn't matter if it's with the janitor from the local school. It's like, oh, I got you a meeting.
So it's not going to lead to anything.
That's exactly it. And we hear this a lot. It's a common talking point for a lot of people is that when I get a lead gen agency, they book a lot of nonsense into my calendar and try to charge me for it, and it's of no use to me. And it's a pointless exercise. When we get into it, and when we talk to people about this, they'll often bring up, are you a lead gen agency? And I'll say, no, we're not. Because a lot of lead gen agencies don't work. Most of our clients, they've tried lead gen agencies and they've failed. And this is why they've failed. And they start nodding along. They're like, yeah, that's true. That's what happened. And as soon as you are talking about their experience without knowing their experience, you've gained credibility with them. Because now you understand why things have failed for them and why things have not worked. And it shows that you have a semblance of understanding. And if you have a semblance of understanding, they're more than willing to meet with you for half an hour to discuss whether or not that can transition into something very powerful.
And how do you adjust your tone or your pace when you're handling objections or someone pushing back?
My tone and pace aren't predicated on objections. They're predicated on mirroring the person across from me. If the person across from me is very easygoing and they're asking me very lighthearted questions, when I say lighthearted questions, I don't mean to say that the questions that they ask aren't meaningful, but in a lighthearted way. If they're being very conversational, I can be conversational back, and my tone will match their tone. But if they're being conversational and they're asking me a question, I'm not going to be firm and to the point with them with my objections, because that's not going to mesh well.
Yeah.
And it almost happens subconsciously now, where the way that I'm talking to somebody, I will match their energy. I'll match the words that they use. If they're swearing, I will start swearing, because that's how they feel comfortable to communicate. And as Gary Vee says, that's just putting more emphasis on words. And if other people feel comfortable doing that, then I'm going to match that.
I love that you're giving permission to swear. That's so funny.
It's perfectly okay. But I've also told people off on the phones as well, while cold calling people. There was one time when I called someone and I saw on our parallel dialer that it said payment solutions for small businesses, transition out of QuickBooks and have a better solution. So I called the person and they're like, "What do you want?" I'm like, "Well, I was looking for this person from this company. Is this the person? Who's calling?" I'm like, "Do you help small businesses transition out of
Yes,
QuickBooks or not? Like, I'm calling because I'm looking for help with this, but if you're going to be such a jerk, then I don't want to talk to you. Like, where do you
exactly. I
get
don't
running
want
a
your help.
business like that?" I literally said that to him and I hung up on him.
Would you say that's like one of your worst experiences of a cold call that you've had?
Oh, definitely not.
Given. Can you
Absolutely,
could you
absolutely
could you
not.
could you give us a little bit of a taster of like your worst cold call? Like, and what you could have done differently?
So the worst experiences that I have had on cold calls are when people are when the day is not going great already.
Mm.
That's a start. And then having people, and some people will try to take jabs at you for doing your job. Some people are just very mean, to say the least.
Yeah.
And they'll take personal jabs at you based on the fact that you're cold calling them. And I feel like that's mostly a representation on them and not you.
Yeah.
But at the same time, when the day has also not been going well, those insults tend to sting a little bit more. You never get over it.
Really?
Yeah. Doesn't matter how long you've been on the phone, it stings every time.
I
You
just
just
can't
know
believe
that
people
there's
are
something
so
better on the
mean.
other end.
Yeah. And the fact that you just carry on and keep trying is really impressive. Takes a lot of courage.
Yeah. And the reason why I say that, Kayla, is because when people get on phones, and especially people starting out, and they feel that it's difficult and they feel that it's hard and they feel like they can't do it and they feel like they want to stop, they think, "Oh, I don't know how other people do it. They must be desensitized to it." And that's actually
Mm.
not the case. I get anxiety every single time I pick up the phone and start a cold calling session to this day. And I've done it for thousands of hours without
Yeah.
exaggeration throughout my entire career, thousands of hours doing cold calls. And I still get anxiety picking up the phone every single time, because you never know what's on the other end.
That is an amazing way to end off this episode. Wow. Ari, thank you so much.
If you're looking to get in contact with me, or if you want to chat with me more about sales, cold calling, or anything under the sun, feel free to visit my LinkedIn profile. You'll be able to connect with me over there. Just ask that you don't connect and pitch me right away. That's not very pleasant. Don't appreciate that, guys. But if you're just looking to have a good conversation, more than happy to have that.